Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Community Connection, your window to the world around you. Today we have back with us Officer Ed Garcia and Mr. John Zadikian. If you recall a different episode of Community Connection, Ed was about to embark on a journey, a unity tour representing his fallen comrades who have been killed in the line of duty as a police officer. And Ed is here with us today to talk about his experience and about the unity tour that he went out and represented Dearborn Heights, represented himself, and represented the comrades who were fallen here in Dearborn Heights too. Such an admirable thing to do, Officer Ed. Welcome to Community Connection
very much,
once
Siham.
again.
Good to see you
and
again.
Welcome back, John.
My pleasure. Nice
it's
to see
a
you
pleasure
as
to
always.
have both of you gentlemen
Thank you.
back again. When you were here on Community Connection before, a few episodes ago, you talked about going on this unity tour, and
Yes.
An amazing initiative and a wonderful tribute to your comrades. Talk to us about your experience, and you left very, very recently. May 9th was
May
when you
9th,
went
yes,
out, and
yes.
you actually trained for a while too. So
I-
give us a little bit of a
Absolutely.
recap and
Absolutely.
move us forward.
Well, this is the second time that I've had an opportunity participating in the tour, and the reason that I chose to do this was it gives us the opportunity, the officers that participate, in honoring those that have given the ultimate sacrifice, which is they've died in the line of duty while serving their community. The tour has been around since the mid-1990s, and the reason that it was put together was that officers felt that it was very important to help in memorializing those that, again, have given the ultimate sacrifice. It started out with a very small group of officers that would ride, it's actually 18, that would ride from New Jersey in various spots of New Jersey, and for 3 days they would go, no matter what the weather is, no matter what the traffic or the conditions, they would travel all the way down and then make 3 stops, and then the ultimate stop was in D.C.
Unpredictable weather, for
Very
sure.
unpredictable. Yeah, we went from wet to humidity to heat to thunderstorms back to
Cold.
humidity and then cold, of course. But what happened was once they began doing this, that unity tour just grew up from there, and now there's several chapters. The chapter that I belong to is Chapter 7 out of South California, and this year in our chapter we had about 300. We had a total of 322 cyclists just in our chapter that left Somerset, New Jersey.
So the goal of this unity tour is to create
awareness and to help in supporting financially the monument, which is in Washington, D.C., which is the National Wall for police officers.
and everybody's name.
Those that
goes
have
on there.
fallen, yes, exactly. Their names are inscribed on the wall, and also police departments that have had officers that have died and prior to the wall being up can submit their names, and then the research committee through the national will do research, and once it's been validated, that officer's name will also be added to the wall.
So this wonderful monument that's being erected, or that is erected, now does someone actually have to ride in that officer's name in the unity tour in order to be part of that monument?
Yes. If an officer has died in the line of duty, either a police officer or an immediate family member of that officer can actually ride in any of the chapters that he or she chooses to join. I chose to join the South California chapter because there were officers from Michigan that were already members, and that's where I was referred to.
Wonderful. And you rode in the name of?
Officer Jason Makowsky, who lost his life in 2006 here in a shooting in Dearborn Heights while on duty.
And your dedication to his name living on, what was your experience in terms of what you actually had to do? Talk to us about where you started and where you ended up, and
Absolutely.
and the route that you
Well,
had to take.
there was
your bike is here, so
It's
obviously
there
it
with
was it was a bicycling
that-
unity tour.
Yes, it's completely on bicycles, and there's a variable of cycles that are used. and there's a variable of experience from from the individuals that participate.
I was reading something about the Unity Tour, and it said something about mountain bikes are okay, but not.
They're not the recommended
Not
choice
recommended.
for travel because you're talking about riding on something for a long distance and at a consistent speed. Our average speed was between 15 and 17 miles an hour. So a mountain bike has a lot thicker tire,
Right.
so it may be comfort, but it takes a lot
Get
more
you
work to
going.
get it to go. Exactly.
Okay.
And that
Where-
doesn't sound like much speed-wise, but on a bicycle it is.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, but for me, a mountain bike would look, like you said, more comfortable.
More comfortable, it'd be great. You have front shock and everything, but once you learn how to ride one of these and you have it fitted just for you, you can
It
go,
goes.
as I did, miles.
And how many miles did you go?
My total on this trip was 350 miles.
Wow.
yeah, so-
Okay. So you went through.
We left
you
Somerset, New
started
Jersey,
in
so I
New
did
Jersey.
I did a lot of training just prior to the ride. I traveled down to Georgia and rode some trails and some what is known as a Silver Comet down in Georgia, so I can keep myself going because the weather here in Michigan was unpredictable. And
No, really?
yeah, just a little bit.
I'm
just a little bit.
surprised.
I know.
Just a little bit,
How
really.
could you say
Yeah.
that?
And but we actually started in Somerset, New Jersey. There is a memorial service that takes place with the Somerset Police Department, which that's where they help us launch off from. And we spend that whole day traveling through New Jersey to our first stop, which is in Philadelphia. And once we get to Philadelphia, all the officers have a time to put their bikes away, and then of course you do your tuning
Sure,
and everything
and
else.
just relax for a
So we
bit.
spend the night there, and the next morning we're up between say 4 and 5. Breakfast is at 5:30, and we were on our bikes by 7:30 at the latest, and we were off to our next stop, which was in Baltimore, Maryland.
Amazing. And did you ride back, or what
No,
was your
once
ultimate
we-
destination?
Our ultimate destination was on our third day. We actually arrived in Washington, D.C.,
Okay.
so at the RFK Stadium, where all of the chapters actually meet. So there was approximately 2,000 cyclists that converged with their chapters and their motor officers and everything else that they arrived
So were
with.
there different routes for?
There's different routes for different chapters, yeah.
Oh,
So
okay, so
each,
not everybody
Not
went to
everybody, you're right.
Jersey.
We,
Okay.
the chapter that I belong to, which is Chapter 7,
Right, from
is
California.
known for the actual, what we call the challenge ride. Some chapters choose shorter routes to take, and we're actually the longest route. We actually are the longest route,
That sounds
and
like
we're in the
it.
saddle, most of the time. Where some chapters may store bikes because of the weather, we ride through it all. We ride through it all.
Now, I know to do something like this, you need some kind of support system, some kind of sponsorship. John, what kind of thing was in place to make sure that Ed had had the support system he needed, and also the financial support
Yeah.
to actually to do
Yes.
this ride?
It takes a lot. People,
Sure.
I don't think realize that some people at home might be, well, it's just a bike ride, or it's just, oh, that's really nice that he did that, or what have you. But there is quite a bit in the way of
Admirable.
absolutely admirable. Yes,
I can say it
yes,
now.
we'll have spelling quiz later. No, it's in all seriousness, it does take a lot, and it just so happened when I've known Ed for years, but when he first contacted me about this particular event, I had just completed a story on the Carly Stitt American Legion post here in town that had made some donations to the community. And they were looking to get more involved in being a more active community provider. And anybody who knows anything about the veterans groups in Dearborn Heights, many of the original people that have put those brick and mortar buildings together and kept them going, sadly they're aging, they're dying off. So it was just one of those things where their particular event happened to come at just the right time, and I told him, I said, well, let me talk to the Stitt Post and see what happens. So the Stitt Post, along with Todd's Pharmacy, were actually his presenting sponsors that provided quite a bit in the way of monetary and other types of support for what he was doing. And then we had other police agencies from around the area, Ferndale, Romulus, Westland, as well as the POAM, the Police Officers Association of Michigan, the union, got involved and backed him. And then once the story actually hit the newspapers and people started talking about it, more and more of the support sort of swelled from within the community. People from all walks of life, from my neighborhood up to City Hall. City Treasurer John Riley, offered some great support, and was a big backer of this endeavor. So it was just sort of nice to see that sort of
People
thing
come
happen.
together,
And of
something
course,
like that.
people have known, Ed and all of his efforts over the years. So in that respect, I think it was, and his head's going to get fat now when I say this, but in that sense,
We're going to take that.
yeah, we're it's like, no, people knew him because of his prior work, with the police department and being active in the community. So it was one of those things where when you mentioned it to somebody, it's like, oh yeah, Officer Ed, what's he up to? What's he doing? Oh, that's great, or what have you, or they were familiar with the Jason Makowsky story.
Right.
So in this particular situation, it was, I would say, fairly easy to get support.
The rest of the
You know,
supporters.
to get the rest of the supporters, and again, like I said, it takes a lot, to do that. It's sustenance, it's travel expenses, the bike, which I'm sure you'll get into later. I mean, that's not a $75 bike you just go to the store and purchase. There's a lot more to it. So there was quite a bit that went into it, to make sure. And then of course, once he got to New Jersey and was on his journey, making sure that people were able to follow through social media with what he was doing, and that was a critical component.
Yes, I used Facebook and posted all of the stops that we were making, and then of course the big city stops, and then ultimately Washington, D.C. when I arrived.
What kind of people rode with you? Were they family members of fallen officers, or were they all police officers?
The majority in our chapter were police officers, but I really had the honor of having a roommate that his father was killed in the line of duty. Originally, I did not know anything about my roommate until he walked in and we started chatting. I thought he's got to be a policeman. And
he was not.
No, he was not. The tone changed when he said, "I'm here in honor of my father, who died when I was 14 years old." So Adam from Lombard, Illinois, was there to ride to honor him. And then his family and his mother were there because they had never seen, they've heard, but they've never seen the National Monument in Washington, D.C. So he was actually very, very touched emotionally, and very physically, showed his emotion as he went through and found the panel, and then was able to see his father's name inscribed on that wall.
I'm sure it was an emotional journey altogether from point A to point Z with the individuals that you met, because I can't imagine anyone doing this without being very passionate and very committed to the process and to the memory of those they're riding for.
Exactly, and you have to be, because there's a story for all the 20,000 plus police officers that are on that wall. There's a story for each and every one of those officers. And Jason Makowsky is a prime example of a police officer that begins his day, donning that uniform with the polished badge to go out and to protect and to serve that community. He or she does not know what's going to happen. And on that fateful day in 2006, Jason was actually on his way home when he pulled into the parking lot, and a call came out for an active shooter. And when he arrived on the scene, he was there originally as an observer, and then ultimately became a victim of the incident. So, we don't know, officers don't know what's going to happen from time to time. The ultimate goal is to begin your shift and then to be able to go home and see your family, whether it's your wife or your girlfriend, fiance, and of course your children, and so on and so forth. But we see that even while we were in our travels, there were stories as we were stopping of officers that had passed, and then we of course heard stories of officers that were, falling while we were still on the road traveling there.
I think, like you just said, it's a daily occurrence. You wake up and you just don't know whether you're going to come home that day. What kind of, and I know the Unity Tour in memory, but are there any, is there a support system for officers that, have those fears or need that, reinforcement?
Yes. Through your union, there's help that you can get through your union. If you have issues in dealing with the post-traumatic stress of an incident that you've been involved in, or anything,
Sure.
that a police officer is involved in, there is counseling that is available, and it's usually through your union. Of course, you talk with your union officer, your president, and then there's also support through the city that provides counseling for you too. So it's there. It's just a matter of making sure that you reach out, because it's made available to you, which is important.
Sure. I mean, being a police officer is so admirable, and something that going into that you have those risks, and
Yes.
so on a daily basis, those are some things that you face, and as a community, especially in Dearborn Heights and Michigan in general, especially now. I mean, being a police officer has been so challenging, with all the headlines in the news and everything that's happening.
That was, as you were saying that was my exact thought. You hear so much, unfortunately, in the media nowadays about police officers and their various activities, and events like this are wonderful from a public relations standpoint because they put more of a human face on people like Ed and those that have been or are still in that line of work that I think sometimes we tend to forget.
Absolutely.
And it's nothing to forget.
Right.
It's one of those things that I think once you come into contact with somebody, and especially like Ed, who's, he's very charismatic, he always has been, and then gets involved in an endeavor like this, it makes an indelible impression on you. And it makes you remember that for everything that you might see or hear in the mass media about law enforcement work,
There's
this side of it. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I would think that the majority of people are more so charismatic, like Officer Ed, and put their heart and soul in it. And I think just a few of those individuals get the attention. And you know what?
And
that's
it's
across the
unfortunate.
board.
Right,
Across
exactly.
the board
Yeah,
with,
exactly.
with everything that we deal with. So we need to remind ourselves,
Right.
that they're out there to protect and
serve their community,
And
and
without police officers, we'd have chaos.
Chaos,
And so
exactly.
that kind of that kind of mental picture needs to continue in our heads. I'm looking at that bike once again.
Well,
and that is one heck of a
Thank you.
of a machine.
Thank you. I'd like to just let you know that is a bicycle that was I received a lot of support from role models in Allen Park and Cycle Connection, which provided the cycle.
There's a story about the tires too, right?
Yeah, those are very, very light. That's a very lightweight bike. It's made for, as they say, speed. So it's a good traveler, and it's got a lot of miles on it. Definitely has a lot of. I'm over 7,000 miles on it right now, just on that. Since I've had it, and it's I think 3 years old.
And you rode it 7,000 miles.
All those miles
All
those miles are by me.
Hard miles.
But, hard miles. But the bike is fitted for me, and it's made to be out on the street, out on the road, and it's an incredible machine. It really is an incredible machine to learn how to operate it, and because it's not just getting on a saddle and pedaling. There's making sure that you have a good form and being comfortable and not having any what they call saddle soreness. I had zero. My legs are great. My body felt fine.
Well, you're fit.
Yeah. You and I can try this.
No, I don't think so.
It takes some training. It takes some training.
What do you do? How do you train? What is your
I usually
routine
ride
to
about
train
5
for
to
this?
6 hours a week. Or I'm sorry, 5 to 6 days a week. So Monday through Saturday is usually my ride. And
This is prior to the Unity
this is prior,
tour
yeah, and I still do it right now.
He still does.
I still ride every day, other than on Sundays. But my training just depends on what it is that I have coming up. and then I usually will do short rides. So I will just get out and do what is known as a 20K just to check my time and see what my average speeds are. And then I will get out and do a long ride, or a medium ride, I should say, which is on average about 40 miles. And then I watch my times and my speeds. And then once a week, maybe every other week, I'll get out and do what is known as a century ride, which is I'll plot out where I want to go and get out and make it 100 miles.
So you're pre-training. I mean, are you at the gym?
Yep,
Are
yep. My
strengthening your
that's
legs?
that's part of it is being the saddle time, which was really important. And then of course having the strength and the stamina. The gym I run, and then I'm in the gym usually about 3 times a week, just lifting weights, nothing heavy, just making sure that I have the the muscle tone. The legs I probably work on a little bit harder, just in the squats and the pressing and so on, because there's the wheels are just never stop. You just never stop really turning unless you're flying down a hill. But and then of course the diet. So lots of chicken and salads and oats and all the good stuff, I guess.
All the good
yeah,
stuff.
all
the
the
good
good stuff.
protein
Yeah,
that
the
you
good
have to-
proteins, exactly. So.
Was there anyone else from within our area that actually rode with you as well?
There were 2 officers from Taylor that were there.
Okay.
So they rode in honor of an officer that was killed in their department several years ago. And then there was a state police trooper that was there. Now she rode for a police officer. Yeah, Michigan State Police Trooper. She rode for a police officer, or I should say for a trooper that died in the line of duty up north. I don't recall his name. But
And
it was.
I don't remember the area either.
Yeah, but
I
up in the
remember-
midsection of Michigan, he was involved in a traffic stop, and it turned into a shooting. But she rode for him. So the contingency from Michigan was a little bit smaller this year than it was last year when I first did it. And but the team that I rode with were the officers from LAPD. A good friend of mine, which is the second year I rode with him, Chris Jarvis from LA. He's a police officer in community relations. And then another officer, Ellie, and she is a metropolitan police officer, which is considered their elite in the LAPD. And so we had our small team, and we just jockeyed in between everything and the 2 lanes, and just kept our group going.
What advice would you give to someone that wants to do this?
Well, specifically for police officers, is to make sure you do some research, choose a police officer that you know, and if there is no one that you know, do some research and see about officers that have never been recognized. Contact agencies. If you have never had anyone fall in your department, contact agencies around you or outside of the state, and see what it is that you could do in honoring them, contacting the family. I spoke with Jason's sister Tara in Florida, and so she knows I did it again this year, and she was very, very touched. She just likes the fact that her brother is being remembered. Her brother is being remembered.
How do the families? What kind of interaction? I know you talk to them, but
noticed on my end that
how do they actually get involved, or are they present?
The families, the way that the families get involved is the very first year of an officer passing. The families are brought down to Washington. So they have an opportunity of going through what is known as the candlelight vigil. There's a week that's spent prior to, so there's counseling classes and how to cope with the tragedy that has occurred. And there are also programs for children that the COP, which is the Concerned Officers Group, put together so that people are aware of what's going on, families are aware of what's going on. And then the ultimate is to not relive, but to know what's happened and to see the support from the outside. So the families are brought into the National Wall, and then there's a nighttime ceremony, which is the lighting of the thin blue line, which will streak across the sky. And there's guest speakers, and all of the officers for that year are recognized.
So that happens every year.
That happens every year. Yes, absolutely every year. So that's the candlelight vigil that's held at the national, or at the monument wall that evening.
So what kind of coverage happens? I mean, I know I tried to get some information about it, and I did see some information. But what's the process and efforts in order to bring more
Awareness.
of
Right.
what's
Right.
happening,
Right,
and,
right.
and to get people more involved and to realize, especially now, you know,
Right.
from what we were talking about. I mean, this is so important, and so important to put this focus into
Sure.
people's minds rather
Sure.
than, you know, what's happening. So what kind of efforts do we need to do, and what kind of efforts are being made?
Well, the beauty of social media is, especially in the beginning when Ed was looking for financial and other support, he had already posted it on his own Facebook page. I sort of picked up the ball at that point, and I started tweeting it. And then the story came out initially about what he was doing. And anybody familiar with social media knows that you take the link and tweet that out, or you tag this person and that person. So with that, it sort of grows, you know, in that respect.
Sure.
Just in watching during the event, this is something I haven't shared with Ed, watching and just doing a search online for the particular event, you see families of other people. I know Jason's sister, a couple of times that I can recall, had commented on some of the posts that
Yes.
you had made, and I know that you've been in touch with her. Other family members do that as well.
Right.
And because of that, you know, the word spreads and what have you. But I think on more of a larger scale, I think as this gains momentum, and being an annual event, it's a little bit tough. It's
Right.
not something
Yeah.
that happens monthly, I think, where people
Right.
are aware of it all the time. But, you know, we have people from Taylor, we have people from, you know, up north and so on and so forth. And hopefully the Michigan contingent will grow. And I think part of what we're doing here today will obviously help in spreading the word, but also getting people thinking about those officers that Ed mentioned that maybe have not been recognized at this point, and getting those friends and families involved and making that spread so that in next year and succeeding years we'll have more coverage, and it will sort of gain more of the recognition really that it deserves.
If someone wanted to participate, maybe a family member, another officer, what do they do to do that?
They can get a hold of, there is a website, which is the policeunitytour.com, and they can
Okay.
also Google it. And then what that will do is it will let you know of the local chapters that are in your immediate area. And then it also has all the guidelines, so the rules and the regulations and their policies and their procedures. So you can go through those, and then of course you can petition them and make contact with them to see it, because sometimes you may not be a family member, but you want to recognize
That individual.
and that individual, which you would have to work with a family member to get their permission, to actually do it, which has been done. It has been done. I know that for a fact.
Well, it's wonderful to have Officer Jason's memory be held in such high esteem, and for you to have done this in his memory, and I'm sure the family is very appreciative of that. You're such a household name in our entire community. I mean, as a Dearborn Heights School Board member, as an officer, I mean, you're known as Amo Ed, as Uncle Ed,
Uncle Ed,
as
yes.
Officer Ed, affectionately by everyone, and very familiar because of what you do and what you contribute. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
And let me say thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to be here a second time,
Absolutely.
and to help
Yeah.
promote this and to help bring that awareness. As John said, it's just once a year, but that once a year I think is really important that that those officers that have given are remembered.
Absolutely. They
so-
should be remembered every day. I
Every
think.
day, that's
This is
correct. That's
John
right.
Zadikian, thank you.
My
Best
pleasure,
PR
Siham.
person and
Always
voiceover
nice to
guy.
see you and be in your presence.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for being with us on Community Connection. Please remember the fallen officers, and also always looking for sponsors. So anyone that wants to be involved, unitytour.com. Thank you for joining us on Community Connection. We'll see you later.